So we all are down with the non-aggression principle that you cannot initiate the use of force against other people. You can use force in an extremity of self-defense and so on, but parenting, unless you're like Mr. and Mrs. Menendez, parenting doesn't really fall into the category of self-defense. So violence that is used in parenting is not morally legitimate. It is the initiation of the use of force to spank and to withhold food and to imprison and so on, and lock in the room and so on. So if we take those off the table as far as parenting goes, if we say, okay, look, I have these principles as non-initiation of force, so can't spank, can't deny food, can't imprison, in the same way we couldn't to any other human being who's an adult. What are my choices? What are my options? The first thing you have to do is deny yourself the capacity to use that kind of aggression, and then a whole bunch of things open up. Like when you privatize something that the government runs, a huge amount of creativity kind of flowers up to solve problems. So once you deny yourself coercion, you get to be creative. So there's some basic realities around the parent-child relationship that are really essential. And, it may seem obvious, but it's not something we think of very often. And I would sort of analogize them or compare them to a marital relationship, right? So first of all, children do not choose us as parents. They don't choose to be born. They don't choose the family that they're born into. They don't choose when they're born. They don't choose what kind of person you are, where you are in your life, what your history was. They don't choose any of that stuff. Now, when I got married recently, just had our 10th wedding anniversary. When I got married, my wife and I, we got to date, we got engaged, we got to test drive each other. We had 11 months from the time we met until the time we got married, and that's relatively rapid. And we had the choice to not get married. We had the choice to marry other people. I'm thinking certain states in the Union, you can marry sock puppets and penguins and things like that. But we had the chance to test drive each other. We made that choice, and that, obviously a good thing. And we can also choose to leave the marriage at any time. My wife could wake me up at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, that's just one too many husbandly thoughts for me. I'm out of here, with a fan blowing hard behind. So the fact is that it's very different between a parent and a child than even sort of a man and a wife. And yet, we generally will try to treat adults in our life better than we treat our children. And that doesn't mean we're always treating our children bad. It just means in terms of their preferences. We all understand that we should have the right to choose to get married. We should have the right to leave marriages if they turn out to be abusive or destructive in some way. But these options are not available to children. Children didn't choose you. They didn't date you. They didn't say, hey, of all the people I could have as my mom and dad, I'm going to choose you because you're just fantastic. And they also can't leave. They, until they're 16 in some places, 18 in other places, they can't leave a negative family environment. They have obviously no legal independence. They have no financial independence. They just can't do anything about it. So they don't choose to be there, and they can't leave. And so if we sort of really mull over that, if we really absorb that reality, I think we can very quickly come to the conclusion that the people we should be treating the very best in our lives are the people who never made the choice to be with us and who can't leave, right? So, obviously I want my wife to love me. I try to be a good husband and a good friend to her and all of that. But if my wife had been assigned to me by the state or by the tribe or something like that, and she simply had to get married to me and she couldn't leave and she didn't choose to be there, I think we all understand that I would have to work even harder to win her love because of the involuntary nature of the relationship, both in its inception and in its continuance. I would have to work like super, super hard to win her love, much more than if she had chosen to be with me, because, chooses to be with me because hopefully she loves me already and so on. And so once we recognize and absorb that lesson, we really understand how important it is to treat our children as best as humanly possible, far better than any other relationship that we can imagine, because of the involuntary nature of the relationship, and because not only because they don't choose to be there and they can't leave, we have to treat them the best to win their love. And the way we do that, of course, is we live principally. We don't use aggression, we don't spank, we don't hit, we don't yell, we don't threaten. And what we do is we ask for feedback, and we say, My local pizza joint, every time I order there, sends me a little flyer or includes something which says, how did we do today? Did you like your pizza? Was it a good pizza? Could it have been better? Was it too hot? Was it too cold? Was it too grainy? Was it too much of this, not enough of this? And if you fill it out, then you get some prize or whatever if you win it. But how many parents do the same thing at the end of the day, say, what worked for you in the family today? What didn't work for you? What would you like to see more of? What would you like to see less of? You know, me as a pizza customer is not the most moral relationship in the world, but me as a parent to get feedback from my children is absolutely essential, that they actually get an enormous amount of feedback into the quality of their experience of me as a father. So I'm asking my daughter every day or two, hey, what did you like? What was your favorite part? What didn't you like? How did this work out? We had this conflict. How did it work out for you? And all that kind of stuff. Is there a better way I could be doing stuff? And all of that kind of consultation and feedback and principled living with regards to the rejection of the use of force, I sort of encapsulate around peaceful parenting. It brings, I think, the best of libertarianism, the non-aggression principle, and a customer-focused kind of lifestyle. You know, children are customers. Now, they're involuntary customers because they don't choose to be here, can't leave. But they are customers of our parenting. And I think if we were to treat them as well as, say, your average pizza joint treats a customer who has choices, I think we would understand that I don't think that we're really being as effective as we can be as parents. I think we kind of take it for granted. Well, they're here, they can't leave, and blah, blah, blah. We tend to blame kids. Even you at the beginning of the show said, well, I was spanked because I was a bad kid. So that's really, I think, the essence of what it is that I'm trying to talk about. You know, do the research before you become a parent. There's lots of great parenting books out there which teach you how to negotiate with your kids from a non-aggressive standpoint. There's parental effectiveness training, tons of books by lots of different people about how to parent peacefully and solicit feedback at all times. You are the provider of a service, the most important service in the world, which is the raising of children. How often do you poll your customers about how well you're doing and what their preferences are? And I think if we really treated children as if their preferences were the most important thing, and this does not mean, of course, everyone says, oh, indulge their every whim and so on. Well, that's... If children are listened to, they don't have whims. You know, whims is kind of a degrading way to talk about how children experience the world and how they feel and want things. But if we were to treat children as extra special, full-on human beings plus, which is really what they are, then I think the world would see a radical change in a generation or two away from these oligarchical hierarchies, these states and sort of hierarchical religions that dominate our society so much. I think it's a huge blow against public education to raise peaceful children who are able to negotiate. And I think it's, in a sense, it's the most revolutionary thing that can be done.